Any other questions?
So recently we had the Honolulu Biennial this spring, and there is a lot of different activations of space and spaces around Honolulu through art. And I'm curious if the Iolani Palace has any plans for different kinds of art programming, or if there has been in the past that I'm not aware of, or if you're thinking about art and technology as a way to potentially activate space and teach history and in this, space.
No, we've talked about bringing art here. Unfortunately, if any installation is outside, the issue is security for those pieces. And we did have conversations with Honolulu Biennial about that. What we'd like to do is, if there are exhibitions that we look at, we want to make sure that they're actually tied to the history of the palace and the grounds, and that they're not just art piece for art's sake, for example. So we are looking at those. We have tried in the past. Nothing has come to fruition yet. We were working with a photographer before regarding doing some type of photo exhibition, but that fell through as well for funding issues.
I have a question. From my point of view, the palace is in the core of a process of nation rebuilding. What are your thoughts about it? What do you think about it? Is it true? Is it just my idea?
Okay, so our organization exists. We have a charter, we have bylaws, mission statement. That's not part of it right now, so we're not at that stage. But so that's a good question. I mean, we will have to confront it. Yeah.
If I can add on just to that.
Yeah, it's open to everyone, the questions.
So, when you look at this place through the lens of law, okay, in government there is only, property is either one of two things: private property, public property, okay? And public property and private property are regulated similarly, but yet a little different under the laws of war or use in bello, okay? So there are provisions in the Hague Convention, again, codification of customary international law that already existed in 1893. You cannot pillage. Okay. It says pillaging is forbidden, both public and private property, in an occupied territory. Now, pillaging goes back to where soldiers, after they kill somebody on the battlefield, they steal their watch, they steal their goods, their wallet, their cash. Prior to that, that was actually accepted as legal. That was booty, you know. I'm serious, that's what they call it. Booty. Not the rap version of booty. But it became illegal under international. It was accepted. You can't do that, right? Because that dead person's property belongs to that country, that army, right? And probably that property would go to their family. Okay, so pillaging was prohibited. Now, when we take a look at what happened at the palace, now with this lens that existed at that time, as it still exists today, the palace was recovering a lot of property that was in the palace, but they're recovering it from all over the world. They're tracking it. In 1893, the flag was actually taken by one of the soldiers of the United States, which was then given to West Point. And then it came back. Okay, right there, what that soldier did, that's pillaging. And that's grounds for reparations. And everything else taken from the palace, that is not private property, that's government property. And it falls under, again, reparations. So when you start to look at what the Friends of Iolani Palace had to do to recover, did you know that Friends of Iolani Palace had to actually pay people who had it to bring it here to put it in there? Right. How's that? It's like buying something from a thief. But again, we didn't know that because remember, we're ignorant of these things. We just thought, oh, they have something, let's negotiate. And then we come to find out, wait a minute, We just negotiated with the descendant of a thief who was subject to pillaging under the laws of war, which is called a war crime. You know, so all these things are starting to come to the surface that is getting us to see things in a very different light. But you know who would see this in this light? Would be Queen Liliuokalani, Samuel Parker, Charles Wilson, because they knew what the rules were. They knew that it was pillaging. But today we didn't because we were just denationalized. But part of that recovering of our memory and the history is now taking us back to, wow, there are rights and means of redress that we didn't know. Because once you start to realize that Hawaii was one of the 44 countries in the world, then what does international law say at that time with regard to what we're now dealing with? And I just wanted to bring that up about those kind of things.
Question to you, Dr. Tsai. The Blunt report, which stated like the illegality of the overthrow, could that still be used today in if there was like a trial or some sort of legal? Could that still be used as like a legally binding document today?
Okay, so in international law, not necessarily. Because international law deals with heads of state that say things, not government officials within the state, right? So Blunt was a commissioner appointed by the president who reported to the Secretary of State, Walter Gresham. So James Blunt, when he was appointed back in March of 1893, his job was a fact finder. He came to Hawaii to gather facts. And he took those facts, and what he was finding, affidavit, he was asking for affidavits. I mean, he did an extraordinary investigation. And he kept sending his reports he started the investigation April 1st, and his last report was July 17th. Intermediate reports being sent up have come to be known as what we know today as the Blunt reports, not the Blunt report, singular, but plural. Now, it was Secretary of State Gresham in gathering that information to make sense of it. And Secretary of State Gresham was actually a judge from New York. So he had that legal background. He put it together, and then he notified on October 18th, the president, these are the findings. But the ultimate arbiter or the ultimate decider of an investigation was the president. And whatever he says represents the United States and can be applied internationally because he's the head of state. So when he gave his message to Congress on December 18, 1893, he spoke emphatically on how this was illegal. And he referred to the Blunt sections of the Blunt report, but it was Cleveland that was making that statement. Now, if he's making a statement to the if he's making that message to the Congress, that message also resonates to all embassies and embassies in the Capitol. They're listening. If you notice, that's how it happens today. Every time something happens in the Congress, guess who's listening? The other embassies, because that reflects the president's statement who represents the United States. And it's that message that is what is the basis that has become a part of to negotiate with the president, to negotiate with the Queen for that settlement, but it was never carried out. That message is more important. So I represented Hawaii at the Permanent Court of Arbitration in the Netherlands. Okay, in its arbitration award, what they added as an appendix to their decision was something that represents the United States. They added as Appendix 1, Cleveland's message, 1893. Second, 1993 apology resolution, because that was a congressional law. And if you read the congressional resolution and Cleveland's message, you start to see some disparities. But what would bind the international community is not the American law, but Cleveland's message. And that's why the tribunal added it to the arbitral award. Yeah, so it's just what are the sources of international law is the key. But again, it goes to understanding not just the facts, but what facts apply and what facts may not apply. Did I answer the question?
Informing one, but yeah, thank you.
Okay. See, I always try to make sure I don't give a soundbite because somebody's, oh, Dr. Sai said. I gotta say, no, Cleveland said. Well, no, this guy said. I'm just pointing it out.
Any other questions? Any comment? Okay, talk about pillaging, right? You know the King of Hawaii had crowns, right? When Kalakaua went on his world tour, he commissioned in Britain crowns. One for Kapi'olani and one for himself, yeah? And what happened was that shortly after the invasion and occupation, the PG guys stationed, sentries around the place. And what somebody did was somebody broke into the Chamberlain's office, and they took the crown, Kalakaua's crown. Do you still have his case over there? The king's king. Okay, so the leather case is still in the Chamberlain's office. What they did was they took Kalakaua's crown, they pried off all the gems, they took off part of the arches on it, and they left it kind of like smashed up back in the well by the Chamberlain's office. They never recovered the gems. And what happened was that in the 1940s, I think it was, the legislature, somebody commissioned like $50 to restore the crown as best they could. So they did gilt, they did iron, and they gold-plated it. And they put glass jewels inside. And that's why if you go to Bishop Museum, yeah, and you look at the crowns of Kalakaua and Kapi'olani, they don't look the same. Yeah. Kalakaua has glass. And Kapi'olani, they never raided. And so they got the original gems and, the original gold, not gilt. So I think that's pillaging, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Because they didn't find it doesn't make it not pillaging. But the act that they don't have it, that means somebody stole it.
Question?
Yeah, when they use the palace, the big groups that use the palace, and they got to pay a certain fee, where does the money go?
The money comes directly to us. The money is paid, it's a venue rental. So when corporations come in, they set up these big tents, they pay us directly. Nothing goes to the state.
Right, okay, thank you.
Where can you find out about our nationality?
Is it me?
Yeah.
Okay, nationality. You folks know there's a difference between nationality and ethnicity, right? Okay, back when I was in high school, I didn't know the difference. I filled out an application for Doe Cannery. Back then it was a real cannery. Summer job. What's your nationality? Hawaiian, Chinese, Caucasian. What's your ethnicity? 2 times. Hawaiian, Chinese, Caucasian. Come on, I know a lot of you guys. It wasn't until I went basic training, the paperwork for the Army, I put down Hawaiian, Chinese, Caucasian for nationality. The drill sergeant said, hey, put down American. I went, oh, that's nationality. My dad, okay. So nationality is a citizenship. It's not an ethnicity, okay? So remember, because Hawaii is a member of the 44 countries, one of the 44 independent states, each of those 44 countries had a nationality, okay? So when they travel abroad to the other countries, they have a passport. That passport is the evidence of nationality, not ethnicity. Okay, so you had a British passport, you would have a French passport. You also would have a Hawaiian passport. So Hawaiian is short for Hawaiian subject. We use Hawaiian wrong today. Hawaiian is an American creation to the Hawaiian Homes Act, OHA. It makes it ethnic. Actually, Hawaiian is short for Hawaiian subject, like American is short for American citizen. You can acquire Hawaiian citizenship in the Kingdom era 3 ways. Birth on the soil, called natural born. Naturalized, you apply, there's a residency requirement, you apply for naturalization. Or if you're born outside of Hawaii, but you're born of Hawaiian subject parents, that's by parentage or jus sanguinis, okay? Now during occupations though, the foundation of the law of occupation under international law is to maintain the status quo of the occupied state. Its territory, its nationality, its laws, that's the goal, is to maintain the status quo. So international law, because of that, would only allow nationality to be acquired during occupations from your parents, not from being born on a territory. Because if it allowed to be born on the territory natural born, then it would allow the foreigners of the occupier coming to the occupied state to overwhelm the national population with their birth. That would affect the status quo, so international law prevents that. Also, international law prevents the acquisition of citizenship by naturalization because the government is not there. So you can only acquire citizenship from your parents. So in this case, when President Cleveland said an act of war was committed by troops in Honolulu on January 16, 1893, that triggered the state of war, which triggered jus in bello, which triggered you can only acquire citizenship from your parents. So anybody today who is a direct descendant of a Hawaiian subject prior to January 16, 1893 is a Hawaiian subject today, irrespective of race, color, creed, or nationality. I'll give you a far-out example. Let's say a French husband and wife, they came to Hawaii to visit. And by the way, Hawaii had tours. Hawaii actually charged, there was like a tourist tax, a $2 charge that you paid that would be put into Queens Hospital. So if you get sick during your time here visiting Hawaii, you're covered. You have health insurance. Yeah, there's a provision in the Hawaiian law for that. Right? Pretty cool, yeah? Universal universal health care. Well, actually, they paid for it. So, let's say this person's wife, who's French, gave birth on January 15, 1893 at Queens Hospital. That child, born in Hawaii, is a Hawaiian subject, but also a French citizen by parentage. That's a dual citizen. Okay, that's how remember, this is during a state of peace. They leave Hawaii on January 20th, go back to France. Did you know that that child's descendants are Hawaiian, even though they'd never returned to Hawaii? That's how nationality works. So, again, the facts and understanding the theory and the legal theory that explains these facts. But yeah, so I would say for us here, anybody who is a direct descendant, so I'm a Hawaiian subject, not because I was born at Kapiolani, but rather I'm a direct descendant of my great-grandparents who were Hawaiian subjects.
Yeah, and my father's side, great-grandfather, was born on Kauai in 1870-something, 1880. So by birth, he has Hawaiian nationality. And my mother's side became a naturalized Hawaiian subject 1891. And so technically, I don't have any indigenous Hawaiian blood, but from both sides of the family, just being pure pake, still I'm a Hawaiian national. And Hawaii is my country.
What about all the immigrants and the descendants of immigrants who came after 1890?
Okay, so I got to point out, there's a guy here named Dr. Willie Kauai back there. His doctoral dissertation was actually on Hawaiian nationality, tracking its origin, and answering the question of exactly who are Hawaiian subjects today. I sat on his doctoral committee, so I kind of know, but that's his expertise. But for this, let me just answer that. Because I want to point out that it's not just me that has information. There's a lot of researchers and PhDs out there that have different areas of research that contribute to further understanding our situation, right? So as far as the foreign nationals, anybody who came here after 1893, if they came here after January 17, 1893, they can only acquire the citizenship of their parents. Now, under the treaties that Hawaii has, that the Hawaiian Kingdom has with other countries and their successor countries, there is no requirement for visas. You could actually live in the kingdom without a visa, okay? And you had that a lot. You had British subjects here, French, Americans, Italians, absolutely. Until they became a Hawaiian subject, like Moreno became the Minister of the Interior in the Kalakaua, yeah, and he's Italian, but then became Hawaiian. So for the people that descend from those who came after, like I'm going to use my great-grandfather, Charles Armistead Reeves. He came after 1893, married my great-grandmother, who's native, and then that's where we came from. we acquired citizenship not through my great-grandfather, but through the wife, right? But if my great-grandfather married an American who also came here after 1893, then their descendants are all American citizens. Yeah. Now, there is also a phenomenon here, and this is where it's going to get very interesting. Remember I told you the status quo. That's the foundation of the law of occupation, to maintain the status quo of the occupied state. So if we take the status quo, and I'm going to use American citizens as an example, just American citizens. There are other foreign nationals here. According to the 1890 census in the kingdom, the government census, did you know there were only 1,900 American citizens out of an entire population of 89,000? That's less than 2%. Isn't that kind of mind-blowing? I thought America took over Hawaii. Actually, it was the United States Marines that did it, not the Americans living here. And a lot of these Americans, some of them actually signed the Ku'e petition against annexation. So it wasn't just native. It was people who lived here, right? So if we apply, not the number, but the ratio, 2%. So if it's 2% of 89,000, then it's supposed to be 2% of 1.3 million. You understand what I'm saying? Who didn't get that? You guys got it? Okay. You didn't get it? Okay, ratio, percentage. Because we're not looking at going back to 1,900 Americans. You can't, because even the native population increased. But the native population was roughly 84% of the national population. Okay, it gets a little complicated, but the national population, as opposed to the entire population. But for Americans, the entire population was 89,000. They were 2% at 1900. The rule on status quo, maintaining a status quo, meaning the ratio, not the numbers, because you can't stick to the same numbers with all these years. You would apply the 2% to the total population today of 1.3 million. Okay? But then if you're going to apply it to 1.3 million, you also have to take a look at, well, how is the 1.3 million in line with the 89,000 and its growth? Obviously, it's a lot more because of the migrations. I'll give you an example. Native American citizens, 1,900, 1900 roughly. In 1890, in 1950, 400,000. That's huge. And that's all from the US Census reports. That is an explosion of a particular population. That's what we're dealing with today to try to figure out how to fix this problem. Because you still have to maintain the status quo, but you also have to be practical. And you cannot expel people based upon ethnicity, religion, because that's a human right violation. But the question is not human rights, but rather the nationality of the person with regard to the status quo. I'm just saying it can get very complicated, and Willie Kauai tackled that topic, right? So when you folks have a chance, Willie, is your dissertation online somewhere?
Yeah, you can just put Willie Kauai.
University of Hawaii. Okay, Willie Kauai dissertation. You get a PDF. Good reading.
But what about all the Japanese and Filipinos?
Yeah, anyone that came after 1893, January 16, fell under the jus in bello, the laws of war during a state of war, and those rules that apply to nationality is universal, not just to American citizens. It's anybody. So even a French citizen coming after 1893, their descendants are not Hawaiian, but rather still French.
So
International law.
So they're Japanese and Filipino citizens.
Japanese and Filipinos are the largest ethnic groups that come post I mean, during the occupation.
Was that 1920?
No, so Japanese are 18. The largest wave of Japanese comes 1895 to 1905, 10 years span, 125,000 Japanese come into Hawaii. These essentially would be a large. This ethnic group constitutes a large population of what you would consider a foreign national. Filipinos come, the larger waves of Filipinos come in the 1920s. today, they would make up the largest foreign national alien that they could occupy Hawaii today.
So according to the plantation contracts, after they worked on the plantation, they're supposed to be deported back out. Will that happen?
Those contracts only apply to those individuals at that particular time, but again, it could become a part of what needs to be understood. So, as we're uncovering or recovering our memory, we're realizing that this is getting complicated. So it has us, for me, it's called the pause button. It's like, whoa, okay, wait. Let me reassess this whole thing and then address it again. But that's why due diligence and research has to be done at an academic level that gets into the nitty-gritty. But you also have to look at this not in a vacuum, or we call it empty space. You have to look at precedents outside of Hawaii that apply to other independent states. A lot of times what we have been doing, not knowing that Hawaii is a country, just like Belgium and France, we've been applying colonial theory and indigeneity that can't answer these kind of questions, and it becomes more racial than it is national. So we still got to start to make sure that we discern between what applies during a state of peace and what applies during a state of war. And that's where these questions come in. It's just that we haven't been looking to that framework that can allow us to understand this. So when we start to bring this out, before you start to look at the facts, you've got to get the theoretical framework straight. Otherwise, you're looking at the facts using the wrong rules. It's like we're playing football using baseball rules. We got to realize what is football rules, or what are football rules, and then go back and apply it. And that's why it's very difficult coming out of brainwashing. You constantly got to keep yourself in check. Am I pushing a particular agenda that I used to believe, or I need to reassess and then look at it again? But it's a process. So that's what's happening now. As we all are awakening, we're now realizing we have more problems to try to resolve. But before we can resolve it, you need to understand it.
Maybe you can correct me, but the 1890 census, out of 80-something thousand people in Hawaii, something about 20,000 of these were Chinese, roughly.
Nationals and aliens?
Yeah, aliens, 20%.
Aliens.
Yeah. Which brings another interesting point. The Chinese and Japanese were not in favor of annexation to the United States because of the Chinese Exclusion Act 1882. These guys are not stupid. They know what's going on. Before the Bayonet Constitution, there were no laws against the Chinese or Japanese in Hawaii. Bayonet Constitution, okay, now I got laws against, but that's an American thing. But they knew what was going on. 1882, Chinese Exclusion Act, they knew it was going to be bad news for the Chinese, and the Japanese people too. And that's what happened exactly during annexation. The Pakes constituted 25% of the non-resident aliens in Hawaii. And after that, bang, we're down to 5%? And you know what happened? Chinese Exclusion Acts. You can come here and work, but you can't bring your family. You can't bring your woman here. So a lot of people go back. And what happens, they intermarry with the Hawaiians. So you got all these Kanaka families. Oh, yeah, well, we piha Hawaiian, But you look back, they got Pake blood because they intermarried. And you took the Kama'aina Pake families. Oh, yeah, we're just pure Chinese, They got Hawaiian blood. It was because of Chinese Exclusion Acts. So the whole thing about this is that the Pakes and the Japanese were not for this. They were against annexation. Because again, they knew what was going to happen, and it did happen exactly like that.
I just want to also point out that aliens had rights in the Hawaiian Kingdom as well. See, that's it wasn't just the Hawaiian subjects here and the aliens there. The treaties is what allowed aliens to come to Hawaii, but they had to come through customs to get approved to come in, right? But aliens, like the Chinese and Japanese, and even the French, and the Germans, and the Scottish, and the British, they were protected under Hawaiian Kingdom law, just the same way as a lawful resident alien in America is protected under American law. It's just that they cannot vote or participate in a political process unless they get naturalized. So like Sanford Dole, his parents were American, but he was Hawaiian because he was born in Honolulu. That's why he could serve in government and ultimately served as a representative in the legislature. Yeah.
So we're going to take one more question, then we're going to go final thoughts. So go ahead.
My grandmother's entry certificate, on the top of it said, United States of America, Territory of Hawaii. And then all her statistics, when she was born and so on. And at the very bottom said, no one shall enter the United States through Hawaii.
So we
That
will
was
take
1901.
1901.
The Organic Act, actually. There was provision, no Chinese enter Hawaii, into the United States from Hawaii. That was part of, I think, the Organic Act.
Not even Chinese, but anybody.
So final thoughts, and we'll go in the order they presented. Kevin, you want to say any final thoughts?
Okay. My final thought would be, as Keanu said, when he went to Kamehameha, he didn't learn any of this history. So I went to Punahou and I didn't learn any of this history.
We'll hold it against
Don't hold it against
You know, we're actually around the same year.
Yeah, exactly.
I know all his friends who was football players.
But what's surprising is that we interviewed someone who had graduated from Punahou in 2015, just 2 years ago, for an internship position. And she had mentioned that she had not learned any of this either, that she was shocked to find out that the Queen was in prison in the palace. So this is still going on today, that a lot of our students are not learning this history. We have approached Punahou, we have been approaching them for years now, about having some type of program where they would come here. So, in case you don't know this, Punahou is probably one of the few schools that still does not come to the palace on a regular basis, but they do send their students to mission houses across. And it's just bizarre that this is still happening today. But Kamehameha comes here, Iolani, Midpak, you can name all the other ones, but Punahou to this day does not come. And one of the reasons I was told why is that they did not want to have to explain to the students why the buildings were named the way they were named.
Thurston.
Dole Cafeteria,
Yeah.
Thurston, yeah, you named it. Bishop Hall. So that's my final.
Well, they do have a part Hawaiian president, but he's going to retire in a couple of years, so it ain't going to happen now, and it'll probably never happen.
Final words. It isn't final. We are all learning from each other. Thank you so much for everyone that has actually done the research. Our goal is to make sure that we share the correct information.
Okie dokie. So, in terms of Iolani Palace and Kaneakapuku, I think sometimes we forget that these are real people. And all these laws, all these things that were important, were written in these places, yeah. These are real people. These are real men. These are what they achieved in these places. So it's not just a piece of history and paper. And you're welcome to come Sunday, please, 9 o'clock. And you can also worship or respect the sacred place up in Uanu.
I'd like to start off my closing comments with a Hawaiian proverb. I know Lelo no Eo. It refers to the kahu'ewai, the water gourd. And the water gourd looks like a canteen with a long neck, looks like an ipu, with a long neck. And the gourd represents the person, and water in the gourd represents knowledge. The gourd with a little bit of water makes the most noise when you shake it. That's a real Lelo no Eo. And I can tell you that when Lynette was speaking about what it used to be, yeah, there's a lot of swishing. Yeah, a lot of swishing. What we're now starting to realize is we're seeing less swishing. We're actually filling each other's gourd. And I think that, well, I know, not that I think, that Kevin and I have been having a couple lunches together and just talking story, and it's collaborative, it's sharing. And that's how it's supposed to be, So when research is out there, make use of it. It's not the enemy. No, that's researching. You may not like what is being said, but you can't deny it because that's historically accurate. It's either falsifiable or it's not. our job is also to explain it, but we need to do it in a way that other people can understand. How can you break it down? And this is being taught. You know, at Kamehameha schools, they're teaching this. At Kapalama, Iolani, you know, we have a teacher over here from Iolani. I was approached by a teacher from Punamoa, actually. They teach it, Rapun. Yeah. They use the book Uamoke'ea. We use the book at UH. In fact, this semester, August 21st is when classes start. I'm actually teaching a cohort of 7 Kamehameha students from the high school, intermediate, elementary on these topics. You know, so what's happening now, it's becoming institutionalized, and the key is, and I'm a proponent of this, don't politicize history. Just learn it, just understand it, good, the bad, and the ugly. But the more you fill the gourd, the less the swishing is. Yeah? Mahalo.
I just wanted to thank everybody for coming, not just our panelists, but all you guys too. There's always so much to learn. When I'm standing up here to tell you, you may not leave until we take a group shot in the back. And that's it. And then you guys gotta eat, and then you have to help us put the chairs away. And we will be here again in August. Don't forget, August 25th. To learn about